of Ghana has successfully evacuated a group of Ghanaian nationals from Iran to Turkey, with plans underway to evacuate others currently residing in Israel. The Minister of Foreign Affairs, Samuel Okudzeto-Ablakwa, who confirmed the development, said the evacuation followed diplomatic engagements with the Iranian and Israeli ambassadors earlier in the week. He explained that the discussions with Ambassador Ali Gomshi of Iran and Ambassador Roy Gilad of Israel formed part of a broader evacuation effort prompted by the conflict between the two Middle Eastern countries. The minister noted that while evacuations from Iran had proceeded, the situation in Israel remained more complex due to the country's state of emergency and closed borders. In an earlier meeting with the European Union on Monday, the 17th of June, Mr. Ablakwa called for logistical assistance from international partners to support Ghana's evacuation efforts. Meanwhile, a tension between Iran and Israel tension continues between the two countries to shake the global economic, popularly known as the global oil markets. Ghana is beginning to feel the pressure amid growing fears of a global supply crisis. There's more in the News Desk report brought to you now.
Iran is among the 10 largest oil producers globally. Together with Israel, they account for about 5% of the world's crude oil supply. As tensions escalate between the two countries, global oil markets are reacting, and Ghana is starting to feel the impact. In response, President John Mahama has directed the finance minister to monitor the situation closely and develop contingency plans to protect the country if the crisis worsens.
Ghana is not immune from the shocks of global events. Recent events in the Middle East, which involve an exchange of missiles between Israel and Iran, have started to escalate crude oil prices dramatically. I've asked our Minister of Finance and Minister of Energy to keep a close eye on the developments and model the possible impacts on our petroleum prices and prepare measures to protect the recent gains that we have made.
The major reason for the implementation of the One Ghana Cedi fuel levy was the recent appreciation of the cedi. But now, experts say that even though the Ghana Cedi has gained some strength recently, making fuel slightly cheaper, that relief may be short-lived if the conflict persists.
Looking at what is happening in Iran, a lot of world stocks are packed. That is a part for it. And so if that place is blocked, it means that close to 25% of export of fuel that passes through that route will not come to the international market. Now, when supply is low, it means that there will be shortage. So that shortage is what will increase the price to go up. And so if the cedi is appreciating, then that impact of a high price of fuel in the international market will not be too much felt at the various pumps. But if the cedi continues to depreciate, then it means that it becomes too trouble one god. And so at the various pumps, the pass-on effect will be massive.
Economist Derek Archer from the Institute for Energy Security offers a different perspective.
All we have control over is to be able to ensure that our currency is stabilized. And so if we can put in place measures that will ensure that the cedi continues to appreciate, that will be a good thing for us. But in the long run, what can we do? Internally, we can be able to ensure that the Temaro refinery lives up to its standard to be able to refine the petroleum products so we do not depend on the international market. Secondly, if BOST has the capacity, they should be able to expand their tank farm. That will help us to have enough storage capacity. And then the long run is that we can also look at the sub-regions where we have our sister nations, where they have refineries. We can depend on them so that we can source petroleum products from there.
If Brent crude stabilizes around $70 per barrel and the cedi maintains a strength between 10 Ghana cedis and 12 cedis, fuel prices are expected to remain relatively stable, rising only slightly by the end of the year. But in a worst-case scenario, if oil prices climb above $90 and the cedi weakens to 14 to 15 cedis per dollar, domestic fuel prices could surge dramatically. Petrol may rise to between 14 cedis and 16 cedis per litre, with diesel possibly hitting between 15 and 17 cedis per litre.
And you heard that report, which is more or less a summary of what's been happening in the Middle East and its possible impact on the Ghanaian economy. Let's now go to the phone lines now and speak to Professor Daniel Draman Keposunyehi. who is Senior Research Fellow at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy. Prof, a very good evening to you. Thank you for joining us on 3FM.
Thank you very much. Thank you. And also special thanks to dear listeners.
Right. We have been given some clarity on what's happening with Ghanaian nationals living in Iran and Israel for that matter. So the Minister of Foreign Affairs says that there has been a successful evacuation of Ghanaians living in Iran to Turkey. Can you help us understand what goes into such an operation? If, for instance, you need to move a number of nationals, we actually do not even know how many Ghanaians that would be. But if you are to move these group of people from one country to the other under such circumstances, what kind of processes are we looking at?
Yes, in such situations, the normal diplomatic processes will not, like visa issues, consular services may not be the normal pattern. So at the diplomatic level, Ghana ambassador to Iran will talk to the counterpart in Turkey and be able to come out with a compromise. And I'm sure this evacuation, the best made is through road transport. Road transport is the best one because of the conflict situation. So they will be able to waive visa requirements and those things so that they are able to move Ghanaians there. And in such emergency situations, some other people may even join the Ghana evacuate and move because they may not be Ghanaians, but once they are closer to that, they will also take advantage to move. And likewise, some Ghanaians may also be stranded in some area and could join other countries to move. So this is not a normal pattern of seeking visa to get to Turkey, but this is an emergency situation and it's handled at the diplomatic level. And I'm sure that Ghana diplomat and that of the Turkey government and diplomatic people in Turkey have ironed out these differences. And they all know the emergency situation. They know this is a very complex situation that we will not be able to follow the normal processes. And so they all create room for this situation so that they are able to move the people to safe land, safe areas.
So help us understand, are you able to tell us what key logistical and diplomatic hurdles Ghana could face in also trying to get its citizens out? I think of the two countries, the one that is suffering the most in terms of the war would be Iran. And the minister is saying we've been able to get our people out of Iran. Maybe Israel is relatively okay, so plans are now being put in place to evacuate Ghanaians in case the situation worsens. But in this process, you've told us that they might waive the compulsory visa checks, passport checks, etc., and then just quicken the process. But are there other bottlenecks or logistical challenges you think the country could face regarding this?
Yes, certainly the issue of, I think, government and the situation, most of the countries, if you take the case of Pakistan and the other countries, they are doing it by road. So I'm sure that our Ghana diplomatic staff, especially ambassador there, will make arrangements for transport owners. Usually they rely on transport owners to be able to contingency measures. Sometimes you may not have the money to be able, but you will strike with them, having lived in Tehran. They might have some networks that will support them to be able to deal with some transport companies, whether Iranian state-led transport or private sector. That is that kind of arrangement they'll put in place so that they are able to move them. And later, once they move to safe zone, these other payments will come in there. Obviously, government of Ghana does not have this transport at its disposal. So they will liaise with the state, Iranian state, and some private companies. And that decides to be done. If other ambassadors who live in Ghana, they know the transport system in Ghana, they can go for states like STC, they could go for VIP. So I'm sure that our ambassadors in Iran and Tehran, for instance, they are privy to some of these things. It's all about going to talk to them, is able to let them know that this is an emergency situation. They should support us with their transport, their buses, so that we can move our people to safe land. And the state of Ghana is capable to settling all the outstanding issues. This is one of the clearest and the most appropriate way that Ghana diplomatic mission in Tehran will explore to get out of this situation.
Right. And then there's the concern about Ghana's decision, I mean, like considering our foreign policy How do you think we need to navigate this current conflict? I mean, there are already concerns about some of the utterances of the Israeli ambassador in Ghana, but we'll come to that particular one shortly. Okay. Talk to us about how Ghana can better navigate the foreign policy principles of non-aligned movement and the multilateralism when you are now dealing with two countries that are against each other.
Yes. I think Ghana, traditionally since the era of our first president, Dr. Kwame Nkrumah, Ghana has actually assumed that non-aligned position, not aligning to the Western Bloc, not aligning to the Eastern Bloc. That foreign policy hasn't changed. Under the current government led by His Excellency John Mahama, it's still the same pattern. The foreign minister, they are still pursuing the same traditional foreign policy that Ghana should not be seen aligning to the Iran, not so much aligning to Israel. I think that is always the smartest thing. It's a smart diplomacy, so that we will call for de-escalation of the conflict, and that is how non-aligned position should be. Ghana might not necessarily make a statement that Ghana is in support of Iran or Ghana is against Israel. I think that we should be mindful of our traditional non-aligned position and still go by that. And I think our Minister of Foreign Affairs, in any response, they should still be reminded of our traditional foreign policy, not to align to any of that. And this is Israel, which is more aligned to the West, and Iran, which is more by apolitical, its foreign policy orientation. Iran is more tilted towards the East, an ally of Russia, ally of China. So Ghana is very much aware of these dimensions, and going that way to please Russia and China could also mean that Ghana might be displeasing U.S. and its allies on the other side, who generally seems to be in line with Israel. So the best is for Ghana to maintain the non-align. We must not align to any of the warring factions. We should rather take a position of hoping to see how we can find an amicable solution to this conflict. That should be the position I think Ghana should go for.
That brings me to the question of what exactly the Israeli ambassador to Ghana has been saying, where he criticized Ghana's voting at the United Nations, asking for a complete ceasefire of the war between Israel and Gaza, or the Palestinian state in Gaza. So he says that we should have voted in support of Israel, but the minister has responded firmly, indicating that we are a sovereign nation and we know our left from the right in terms of which issues we stand behind and which issues we disagree with. Does that come to you as a surprise following the concern raised by the minister and the fact that the Israeli ambassador to Ghana is saying that we should have voted in support of Israel?
Yes, so obviously we expect an Israeli ambassador to Ghana to tell Ghana to go in the way of Israel. That is a normal one in diplomatic practice. But Ghana, as a sovereign state, has the right to decide whether to go that way or the other. And Ghana is not necessarily condemning Israel. It's the case of the matter they are looking at, the atrocities, the suffering of the Gaza people, the humanitarian crisis there. So absolutely, I think the government is right to be on the side of the Palestinians. At this critical moment, the government has taken the right position, and Israel, I think that all this right to self-defense, I think we have overextended it. So I think Ghana's position is apt and it's appropriate. Don't also forget of it that Ghana does not have a very fixed station. And remember when the attack came from Gaza against Israel, Ghana condemned that. They condemned the Hamas for attacking Israel. And that is still the same Ghana. Today, it's on the other side. They are also condemning the Israelis. For me, I think it's appropriate. And at the point when Ghana see the need to go in for this, they will take it. At any point Ghana think there's a need to align with the Israelis, Ghana will go that way. And Ghana as an independent state, we are to take a decision based on the issues on the ground. And I think that government has not really erred by voting the way they did.
Okay, my final question would still hover on the issues of the United Nations. Where is the United Nations? Are they just a talk shop or an institution that just talks and passes policies but are unable to take concrete, decisive actions? Because the question is stemming from the fact that what's happening in Russia, Ukraine, the UN has just been voting for or against an issue. Then we have Israel and Palestine. The UN is still seem to be just holding meetings and upon meetings. Now we have Israel attacking, taking their steps to attack another sovereign nation. In all of this, the United Nations seem to be just holding several meetings and just cautioning and imploring Israel not to do so. What is the relevance of the United Nations in all of this? And do we actually have a body that can actually hold any country, for that matter, be the US or not, if they are flouting the UN Charter?
Yes, this is the difficulty that we have. I will maintain the position that no matter how perceived weak UN is, I don't think that is still relevant. As long as it's a place that our representatives meet, take a resolution, condemn one point or the other, I think that is very relevant. It's just that the UN Security Council is being faced with a challenge because of the veto power of some five veto members. And that is what is crippling. That is making Security Council not being able to take prompt decisions. And remember, if all Security Council members vote yes, and one of the veto members say no, for instance, US, which has always, in most cases, stand in for Israel, there are no votes, make the whole decision null and void. It won't hold. It won't be able. It will not be binding. And so that is the veto power that is crippling the Security Council in taking decisions. And as we said, many have called for reforms, many have called for it to be scrapped, others are calling for it to be expanded. These are all problems. If you scrap it, maybe other development will come. But I think that if they scrap it, then that you can see all the sovereign states taking one vote, taking a decision, and that could be verified. But others will even say that if it's even scrapped, other challenges will come in there. So I think UN still remain relevant. Even though UN Security Council is not able to take decision, it's still very relevant. And at least since the formation of UN, we haven't encountered a third world war. And that shows that UN Security Council or UN as a body is still relevant. Remember, the League of Nations couldn't have stopped the war that was the Second World War, and that was how it became redundant. So in the event that UN Security Council failed to take prompt measures, prevent certain wars, prevent all these things, and in the event that the Third World War occurs, at that point we might then be compelled to say that UN as a body has outlived its usefulness, and maybe people call for a different international body that will be the mouthpiece of all governments of the world. But until that, I think the UN Security Council or UN as a body is irrelevant. Even as we go to talk, it might not just be a talk show, but some of the resolutions have an effect, even if it's not binding, but it has an effect on the aggressive state to watch out. And that is still very important.
Thank you so much for your thoughts and expertise on these issues. Professor Daniel Draman Kipo-Sunyehi, we are always happy to hear you speak to us on these issues. You heard the thoughts of Senior Research Fellow at the Legon Center for International Affairs and Diplomacy, Professor Daniel Draman Kipo-Sunyehi, on the current conflict between Israel and Iran, and by extension, Israel and the state of Palestine, I should say, where a number of other countries are already feeling the pressure of the fight between these countries already. Ghana the President of the Republic has asked the Finance Minister and the Minister in charge of energy to start looking for alternative places Ghana can get fuel, because Iran is a major transport hub for a lot of the fuel that we use as a country, and many other countries depend on Iran as a transport yard, or as a thoroughfare or a pass-through for fuel use. And when this war continues, it is likely to have an impact on how we get our fuel, and by extension affect fuel pumps, the pumps at the fuel, and then also how much you have to pay for fuel. So it's a very concerning issue globally, but although it is far away from us in the Middle East, it looks as though we need to start bracing ourselves. But the good news, however, is that Ghanaians that are in Iran have been evacuated successfully to a neighboring country. The minister says they've been moved to Turkey, and hopefully in the coming days we'll get to know how quickly they can move to Ghana. Those in Israel, though, because of the current situation, the minister says that they are still in Israel, but we are keeping close tabs on how soon. If the issue escalates, then it means we should be expecting Ghanaians to be brought from Israel as well, probably through Europe, then into Ghana. This is still 3FM 92.7. You're listening to Hot Edition, and we are live from our studio here at Adisanwe Kanda in Accra. Let's know